So welcome to today's event. It's part of the York Festival Ideas Online. I'm so excited about this, to be part of this year's virtual version. If you're watching live, you can ask questions using the Q&A, which some of you have already found. And that's the Q&A button on your screen. And this is available throughout the talk, so questions can be asked at any time. And should you have any technical issues, just remember you can rejoin the event if your Wi-Fi drops out using the original link that you've used to begin with. Please remember that today's event is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch again using the Watch Again section on the York Festival of Ideas website. So it will take a few moments to appear. So now, the observant among you will have already spotted that I'm an enthusiast, so a little over enthusiastic at times, and so please do ask for clarification. Don't be shy. I wouldn't be if I were you. So ordinarily I would just say interrupt me during my talk if it was live, but for safeguarding reasons I can't show faces or voices. It's a bit strange for me. But you can, as I say, you can message in the chat box, not the chat box, the Q&A box, and ask questions, or bring in one of your own ideas. I'm certainly not the only one with good ideas. And as far as I'm concerned, it's all about making connections with each other. Let's make the most out of the interactions that we can do with this new format that we wouldn't normally be able to do. If I don't notice your comment at the right time, I'm more than happy for others in the workshop to respond. So if you open your question and A box, you'll be able to do that. I won't be in the least bit offended if you answer questions for me. I've got a bit of support collating your queries from the wonderful Naomi Richards from the Festival of Ideas. I should be able to answer some at the end, and if not, I am happy to answer afterwards on the Watch Again button. I'll leave you a video which answers some of the questions if they come up during and at the end. Okay, so right, so I'm Harriet Ennis, Head of Psychology at Bootham School and a tutor for the wonderful York ISSP, which is delivering enrichment to students all over York for over 10 years. And I plan today to give you ideas that you can put into action and also explain a model that I've made to help you cope with uncertainty and just with existential angst in general. So the truth is there are so many ways to cope, and being open to talking about it and being open to inspiration from wherever that may come is the key, which, as you'll clearly hear today, you know, you're on the right track already because you've opened yourself up for this inspiration. For me, the difficult part has been deciding from all the ideas which to put into the talk today. That's been the main challenge, but it's been exciting. So where to start? Uncertainty. How's that looking? That's looking pretty good. Right, so you might think this is a bit of a bleak starting point, perhaps, from Martin Luther. Nothing in the world causes so much misery as uncertainty. But perhaps it's validating of the struggle we've been having lately and in general through life. Not to say that our feelings are like this all the time, but personally, I feel that more than ever, we've been feeling this sense of uncertainty. And at times it does feel like uncertainty is the most stressful thing. You know, feeling uncertainty and stress, not just about COVID, but about climate change, about my own health as I'm getting old. And I think perhaps what makes the uncertainty so difficult at the moment is this third quote, just the uncertainty of not, including fear as well, of the invisible threat, which is quite proximate with COVID, and all the new uncertainties that keep unfurling as well. It makes it many layered. Something to be grateful for was the wonderful sunny weather here in the UK that we had during lockdown. But if I'm honest, at times I found I was unsettled by worrying that I wasn't making the most of it. And this sort of leads to the idea of Buddha's first noble truth. Yeah, life is suffering. This philosophy points out that suffering is an unavoidable accompaniment to physical existence. And weirdly, I find this strangely comforting. It's sort of like just soaking into a warm bath of, then that means that, you know, I can perhaps feel the peace of acceptance. I can affirm that it's not my fault that I'm struggling, and it's not just me, and I'm not alone, and we're all in the same boat. So yeah, here we go. Friedrich Nietzsche, famous philosopher's view. I do tend to take a rather less bleak view than this. To live is to suffer, and to survive is to find some meaning in suffering. Of course, the benefit of pessimism is that the only way is up. But luckily, this is from Christopher Ennis, my husband. Luckily, life is explained by both Nietzsche and nurture. See what we did there. What I'm saying is, for one thing, playing with ideas and sharing ideas is what it's all about. And I hope to give you some. Refreshing ideas, some practical ideas that you can put into action. And if there is one action that helps humans cope, it is communication, connection with others. And I can offer you some links to take away from this. Two TED Talks I would recommend are for further inspiration. Brené Brown's work on the power of vulnerability. She's very entertaining as well. And the TED Talk on connecting with people, not with small talk, but with big talk. It's a great idea, asking big questions. And then the last link there is about hugs, which we haven't been able to share as much lately outside of our family. And so I just thought I would do the best I can and share with you this virtual hug. I like the muddy carrots here because they represent sort of the mutual acceptance of others and self as well in this messy existence. So especially if you're feeling blue, and you have been feeling blue, yeah, everything can seem bleak. You can see my face there. Everything can seem pretty bleak at times, but just remember, give it time, get help, talk it through, and things will get better, and the fog will lift. If anything I've learned in life, you know, give it 3 days, and even tough times, things will change, things will get better. So I found this news of a girl who did manage to hug her grandparents using a shower curtain, a glue gun, some plastic plates, and a couple of Ziploc bags. And a good hug increases the so-called trust hormones, the oxytocin, that all primates build and bond with over mutual grooming and breastfeeding and various things like that. Now, humans have such large social groups by nature that there just isn't enough time, not enough hours in the day to get your daily dose of bonding biochemicals by mutual grooming. But luckily, we have evolved the ability to build oxytocin biochemistry in our bodies using just eye contact and shared communication, a mutual smile or a shared joke or shared emotions. Not just touch, can make us feel all loved and loving towards each other. And this is perhaps why social media may leave us not quite so feeling satisfied. It can make us addicted and feeling needy and paranoid, because we get the serotonin rush from getting likes and shares and the feedback. But it's not backed up and balanced with the oxytocin that we might get in a real-time mutual interaction. So perhaps even the time lag that you get on FaceTime and Zoom and things like that means that the oxytocin level is suboptimum. But I guess the good news with that is, as technology improves, that feel-good factor should increase as well, which is why I've said FaceTime is better than Facebook. The idea there. Now, it is worth remembering that clearly we all experience copious amounts of zest, joie de vivre, like this baby here, and contentedness. We've all experienced that at some point in our lives. We felt connected with the world, on top of the world, peaceful, powerful, like we could achieve anything. This is a state that we've all experienced at some point. We've all at some point slept like a baby, at least when we were babies. And so feeling at peace is an ideal, but we most probably will feel that again as well at some point in our lives. Being alive is literally awesome. I guess I just want to remind myself of that. When things go wrong and we're feeling uncertain, it can feel like the end of the world. And we're just, as adults, not really free to share our feelings in this authentic manner, like this baby. It really just go against social norms to wail in the street or to wail over Zoom and really express ourselves. And perhaps that's why we find it harder to cope these days now we're older. Perhaps when you're a toddler and you can express yourself, you see it. If you've spent time with toddlers, the next minute you're like, how are you feeling like that again? How have you got over that so quickly? And they're on top of the world, full of excitement. The world is full of exciting possibility. So living in the moment, perhaps not a luxury that adults get to experience as often. We need to plan, we need to run the show. But as adults, we are to some extent stuck with uncertainty, and there's an acceptance to be had in that. We do need to juggle complex priorities, and we're never quite sure if we've got the balance right, whether we've prioritized the right things in the right amounts. And so we need to, as adults, become masters of the art of being satisfied by getting some of it right and being comfortable with failure, and recognizing that failure is the first attempt in learning, and all of those positive mindset, growth mindset ideas. So if we accept that uncertainty is part of our experience, does that help? We hear the word unprecedented so much at the moment. Species extinction is at an unprecedented rate. There are unprecedented events, one after the other, reported in the media. In fact, there's an unprecedented amount of the use of the word unprecedented I've spotted. So in all this apparent turmoil, it's easy to overlook that actually we're generally safer than we've ever been. I'm making generalizations, but that's what I'm intending to do. Generally, human-to-human violence, for example, is at an unprecedented all-time worldwide low. There's a book about this by the famous Steven Pinker. Now, we have, for the most part, police forces and law and human rights, so we don't have to, go and grab our stuff that when it's been stolen, grab it back for ourselves and start a blood feud and have vengeance. In fact, that's not allowed. So the world seems very violent because of global news networks and the pace of information input, but actually might be worth remembering that it isn't. We know that at one time it was possible to read all the literature that had ever been written, and now, oh my goodness, the amount of information that is coming our way. And you're probably thinking, I wish she'd slow down and speak a bit slower right now. Have you recently listened to like a 1950s BBC science broadcast recently? I shall do an impression. Okay, so what you are saying, Professor Harlow, is that from your research, you can say that food alone is not sufficient for mental well-being in baby monkeys. But can this really be applied to human infants? And by the, even me, and I'm the one who's talking, you're thinking, oh my goodness, will you please get to the point, and it's worth listening to those broadcasts just to remind yourself about what the pace of life is like right now. And of course, you're feeling stressed. The amount that a child has to assimilate in terms of input coming in from all angles all the time. We are becoming masters at the art of filtering. But nobody said that's going to be easy. Because, anyway, perhaps then this points to a key being to cut down your stress, be highly selective about your exposure to what's coming into your home and into your ears and eyes. Uncertainty is not new by any means. Yeah, we're less worried, for example, about our village being pillaged generally in the modern age. But fires in Australia that you can't do anything about is it starts a terrible grieving process, and we have to end up shutting down emotionally in order to get through. But yeah, so you've got two approaches, and people have different characteristic ways of doing this. Broadly, there are two characteristic ways to deal with anxiety that comes from uncertainty and everything else. So I tend to look for solutions, hence this talk. That's why I face problems head on, and this can lead to an overwhelm and a burnout, taking on too much stress and anger and regret and shame and guilt, and it's not fun. Unfortunately, the other route, which also works up to a point, actually also leads to the same, because your unconscious mind knows that if your actions are not matching your beliefs and your concerns and you're not addressing them, ultimately, I reckon your anxiety would be even greater. And worse, but without apparent cause, you end up in this state of free-floating anxiety where you don't even know what it is that you're anxious about. I wonder if you've experienced that. And it doesn't solve the original problem. So you need a balance, and I guess that's where just looking at a little model like this is not the main model, but helps just to get an overview of what you're aiming at, holding things in tension, being aware that you can't go to either extreme of these. I think the disconnection we feel with nature, for example, at the moment, and the compassion, that the denial that we're having there is what's causing this major global warming threat in the first place, isn't it? So how do we get that balance? Well, mindfulness, which I could do a whole workshop on. If you want to remind yourself about how to do that, it is a good link, Meditation 101 from Happify. It's a good little introduction to get you started. And the ancient wisdom of solvitur ambulando. Yeah, it is solved by walking, from St. Augustine. Ideally, walking mindfully in nature, that would be the great combination. Okay, so that is not a new idea, but it's worth remembering. And in terms of if you are addicted to news, then there are alternatives. You can get the happy newspaper through your door, and there is type positive news into your search engine. You'll get options like this one here, and it is the up-to-date stories, but through a positive lens instead. So you may end up feeling less hopeless and helpless. Yeah. I haven't found a radio or TV channel yet. Perhaps somebody could recommend that, which does the same. I actually read my news filtered through the New Scientist. So I read about COVID, for example, once a week. But as I say, through the New Scientist magazine. Perhaps this is only a temporary fix. We can't really ignore the problems entirely, can we? So perhaps we need a little bit of magic to change our minds about it, so that we can be angry and frightened and yet still have an excellent level of overall well-being. Some people do. They are quite rare, but they exist. So this workshop, I'm going to just stop the PowerPoint for a minute, and I'm going to do some mind magic for you. Because of course, I'm a psychologist, so I can read and control your mind, and I can, yeah. So I'm going to need a volunteer, and now this is a tricky bit. I hope that I can run this. So normally I would just throw a ball around the audience to randomize so that you knew I wasn't using a stooge, but this time I'm going to, is that Cheryl raising her hand? Me, I want to do it. Okay, wait a minute, don't volunteer yet. So what I'm going to do is see if I can do this over Zoom. So I'm going to ask you in a moment to put your name or initials, if your name is particularly characteristic, you can just write your initials. And I'm going to ask you to just type your name when I say go, to say that you will volunteer for this little piece of magic. I'm going to control your mind, but I promise you it's quite safe and there are no long-lasting after effects. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you might be thinking, why is she doing magic now? Well, I guess another, just to interrupt myself further, another way to cheer yourself up and cope with uncertainty is distraction. We know that works with toddlers. Distract yourself, and it does work for adults too. And be playful. So yeah, so I'm going to make this a race. Yeah, and it's a race to put your name in first. Okay, so are you ready to type your name in the question and answer box when I say go? Okay, ready, steady, go. Wow, brilliant. Okay, stop. Fantastic. That's working. It's brilliant. Okay, so I can see we've got Liz, DK, and HGB were the first three. Okay, and I've just moved the secret circle, and you can see that the number 3 was already on the screen, and that means I had predetermined that I was going to pick the third person in the race, and hopefully that will make you realise that. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk it live, could I? That I wouldn't end up getting my stooge when you're all available. So you'll believe me that this has not been pre-arranged. Now I can actually see that you're HGB. Can I just check with you if you can answer me? I don't know you, do I? I just want to make sure that you're confident that I haven't arranged this with you. HGB, can you talk to me now in the Q&A and say, have I arranged this with you in advance? No, you don't know. That's fine. That's the right answer. No, I haven't arranged it with you. You don't know anything about it. Great. So I think I've stopped sharing now, and I'm just going to move this so I can see myself. Right. Okay. So you should be able to see me. Okay. And I'm just going to get my my magic from Vinny from behind me here. So HGB, thank you for answering, and I'm going to ask you now just to stare into my eyes so that I can make a mental connection with you. Okay, you feel that coming through? Okay, so I think I can do this. I've been practicing over Zoom, so that is, you know, mind control over Zoom. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you to think of a colour. Okay, just put this back. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to think of a colour, right? So HGB, is a colour coming through to you straight away? You've got one coming through in your mind. Can you give me a yes or a no? Can I ask everybody else if you can stop asking questions just for a minute? I'll let you get back on there in a moment, but so I can just focus on Helen. Okay, so can I just check with you, Helen? Is it one of these colours? Is it blue, green, red? Is it one of those colours that's coming through? It is. Brilliant. Okay, super. So now I just want you to focus in on yourself for a second, and now I want you to make a decision. Your decision to make now is: do you want to stick with that colour, or do you want to change your mind? Stick or change your mind. That's your options. What do you think? Can you tell me? Just scrolling down. Change, please. Excellent, excellent. Okay. So you've changed your mind and now you stick. Okay. So it's still one of these colours, right? Yeah? Still one of these colours? Just scrolling down. Excellent, excellent. Okay. I think it's worked. I think it's worked. Okay. Right. So all I'm going to ask you now is then, let's see if it has worked. Which colour is it? And the moment of truth, I scroll down. Blue? Blue, you say? Wow. That is amazing. So you have seen behind me, yes, the prediction envelope has been there the whole time. And what do you suppose is inside? We just look inside. I'm going to ask you, what does it say? Amazing. So it's true, psychologists really can control your mind. Are you convinced, Helen? Anybody want to make any comments about that? How did I do it? How did I control your mind, Helen? You had a free choice. Okay, amazing indeed. Thank you very much. Right, so it's a trick, of course. It's a trick. I have not controlled your mind, Helen. You might have an idea about how I might have done it, and you can share that in the group. So hang on, just going to go back to my presentation. So yeah, that was a trick. But the reason I did it, apart from the fact that it's a bit of fun, is that psychology is real magic. Psychology is magic that you can do based on research, and then you can change the world with it. You can actually change your mind in a way that's just a bit of silly magic. But psychology is real magic. So I want to do a demonstration. How am I doing for time? Great. So I am going to have to ask a family member to get involved with this. Could you join me, please? Now, I've got some perception goggles here, which you can see they've got prisms, and it just shifts everything over to one side. Okay. In fact, I'm not going to use those ones because, luckily that wasn't the water. I'm going to use these ones, which do the same as this, but they're just a little bit more user-friendly. In fact, I got these from Cardiff University psychology department as a prototype. They do some great printing. If you put these on, you won't notice much apart from it's slightly blurry to begin with.
I've never been a beautiful assistant before.
You've never been a beautiful assistant, no. Okay.
Before.
Okay, just do what you're told. Okay, right. Okay, so you don't notice much to begin with until you try to touch my finger. Oh, actually touch it. That's it. So your perception has been changed over, has been moved over just to one side. So you probably see my finger about there. Okay. So now touch your nose. I bet you can still find your nose. That's it. Okay. Now touch my finger again. Okay. And each time you just correct and find my finger, then back to your nose. I want you to just keep doing that, and you'll find you'll get better and better at it. Okay. So keep going, keep going. If I move my finger, keep going. Keep going. Okay, so you're recalibrating. He's actually now altering his nerve pathways as he goes, a bit like what a toddler would need to do. A toddler would need to do in order to recalibrate as they grow. Okay, so after about 20 times, okay, you have now altered your neural pathways. So if I just flip this up, take your finger away for a sec. Flip this up, and so you can see normally again. Now try and touch my finger. Oh! Does it feel really weird?
Yeah, really weird.
It's almost like you're being magnetized to the wrong side.
Really
again, there's no permanent effect. Okay, so thank you very much.
Can I go now?
Yes, please. Okay, so right, there's no permanent effect on that. You quickly go back to normal. Right, I'm just going to share again. So the brain is plastic, meaning it changes all the way through your age. You can teach an old dog new tricks in terms of neuroplasticity, and you can make new connections, and you can do it deliberately and in a directed manner. Now, this means you can literally change your mind. Okay, so if you're struggling, there are ways in which you can actually alter the way that you feel, the way that you think, and your experience of reality, using our understanding now of the brain, which is very exciting. As I say, true mind magic. You will notice that I've taken this image off the internet here, where it says that the left prefrontal cortex is where happiness is. Now that should ring neuro nonsense alert klaxon. Of course, we don't have an area of the brain which is responsible for happiness. However, the left prefrontal cortex has a role in the inhibiting of negative emotions. The point being is that area is highly active when you're happy. in people who, those rare people who claim to be a 9 out of 10 for happiness on a general day-to-day basis, not to say that they're happy every moment of every day, but they generally have really high levels of well-being. They have higher than average activity in the left prefrontal cortex as well. They have higher density of neurons there. They have higher levels of activity, higher blood flow, all things associated with that correlation. So I think you can see a picture here of a Buddhist monk. You might also be able to see my little arrow. Can you see my arrow as well? Okay. So this is the normal distribution of human beings. And you can see that for any given characteristics, most people are average. Yeah, about 68% of the population fall in the average range. And you get these very rare people who rate themselves as very happy. And as I say, you could predict that those people, due to the correlation, will also have high levels of left prefrontal cortex activity. Now, there's some fascinating research coming out of neuroscience using neuroimaging, EEG, fMRI, and PET scans. As you can see here, this is EEG, which looks at brainwave activity rather than blood flow and activity, which is a slightly different way of imaging. But they all point to this idea that you can change your brain through training. So looking at Buddhist monks, they looked at, this is one example, they looked at Buddhist adepts who'd been doing 10,000, they'd already done at least 10,000 hours of meditation, transcendental meditation, where practicing compassion, sending out loving kindness. 10,000 hours, that's like 10 years, 9 to 5. It's like doing your job. And all you're doing in your job is that one thing. And I don't know whether you're aware of the book by Erickson, which suggests that if you do 10,000 hours on any activity, if you've got a normal brain, 10,000 hours on any activity will make you world class. Yeah, so if it was an Olympic sport, you'd end up world class if you spent that amount of time on it. So they have done their 10,000 hours, and you see when they start, before they even start meditating, you can see a significant difference compared with novice meditators or normal healthy controls. The average brain, if you like, they've already got more left prefrontal cortex activity. But when they start meditating, it's not just rare up here, it's off the scale. It's like 4 standard deviations away from the norm. We see, for example, gamma wave activity or density of neural activity, which is higher than they've ever seen in any healthy normal brain. So I guess what we're saying is, due to this triangulating evidence and dose effect, we can say that we've got pretty strong evidence that you can change your brain, and anybody therefore would have access to the sort of euphoria, the nirvana that you might experience doing that. Trouble is, we just don't have 10,000 hours to devote to meditation. Generally, not many people do. So I guess what I want to say is that I am not saying that positive emotions are the only desirable trait and state to be in. It's not just another stick to beat yourself with. Now I failed because I'm not happy and grateful and singing and mindful all the time. I think the point I should have made when I was distracting myself is the good news is mindfulness exercises are something that you can, yes, do in isolation on a regular basis as a practice, but you can also be mindful during your day-to-day, everyday activities. So it's something that you can alter your brain activity, generate those neural pathways without having to devote your life to Buddhist meditation. So hopefully I've made my point about mindfulness, and we can move on. So yeah, I'm not saying that the whole point is to be positive all the time, and that you failed if you're not. What I am saying though is that if we can address building into our lives ways to increase positive emotions we experience on a day-to-day basis, then we'll be better able to cope with the inevitable negative emotions that also come to us on a day-to-day, life-to-life basis. Even clinically depressed people have positive emotions. Flourishing people still have all sorts of negative emotions. Happiness is not a permanent state of well-being. It's an overall state on a sort of monthly average. Anguish is valid. It's motivating. It's a creative force. I mean, here's Van Gogh to represent that. Furthermore, to tell someone who's clinically depressed, oh, just do a bit of mindfulness practice or choose to be happy would be really quite insulting. So, but to ask them to change some of their habits, to build some new neural pathways in terms of their characteristic ways of thinking would be helpful. I recommend this TED Talk. It's amusing, it's convincing, and explains that we tend to, it's not that we can't change the way we think, it's that people mistake how to do it. So The Happiness Advantage by Sean Anker, great TED Talk. He's pointing out that we tend to believe that if only this and if only that, if we were successful, then we'd be happy. And we're always moving happiness over the cognitive horizon. Whereas, you know, the idea of it's the journey and not the destination, we know this, but do we really put that into practice? In fact, success does bring some happiness, but it doesn't necessarily last. And really, if we get it the right way around instead of all the way around wrong, you see what I did there, then if we actually work and focus on building happiness in our lives, or well-being at least, then that brings us more success, actually, because happier people tend to be more flexible of mind, more creative, more gregarious. They collaborate better. They're more open to new ideas. They synthesize. There's all sorts of things that make happiness actually breed success and not the other way around. Whereas when we're focused on success, we get heads down, we connect less because we're so busy at our goal that we actually forget those self-care and well-being things. Now, I just thought I'd bring in for a moment, how am I doing for time? Not brilliantly. I thought I'd just bring in a bit of my own research, unpublished, but I did this with 60 12-year-olds. I was just blown away by the results, and it really got them thinking, actually. So they thought that they were just looking at how to do double-blind procedures. They were asked to taste 2 cheeses and rate them from 1 to 5, 5 being delicious. And half of them thought, they had no idea whatsoever that either of the cheeses were vegan. In fact, they were both vegan cheeses. And then the other half thought that just one of the cheeses was vegan, when in fact they were both vegan. And look at the effect on their perception, on their experience. So you can see that there's a definite preference for cheese A, which is Via Life, by the way, just the ordinary block. And they, you know, the majority of people really quite liked cheese A. But look what happens if the suspicion that just one of them is vegan, they've dropped into the dislike end of the rating scale, and you know, it's halved the liking, if you like, from that descriptive statistic. So this really got home to them that you basically get what you expect in life, or at least that alters reality for you. Your expectations have a potent effect on your experience of the world. They shape your reality dramatically. And does this give us an idea that reframing uncertainty, which, as we've said, is inevitable, and expecting to cope and to thrive could have quite a dramatic effect on your experience day to day? Can you set up your life so that you learn optimism rather than helplessness? So I'm pushed a bit for time because we're faffing around with the PowerPoint, but I want to share this idea with you that I've got and modified called the butt swap. Sounds a bit dodgy, but it's fine. The butt swap is just a little model, a little technique for reframing. So, for example, you might have heard in everyday life where, you know, everything before the butt is basically obliterated by what goes after the butt. You know, like you know, I like your story very much, but the grammar is no good, or you know, I like your dress, but your hair's a mess, or and it really makes a big difference to the way that you feel about things. So what you do with a butt swap is you just swap them round, so you end on the positive note. So rather than saying this first one, you'd say, Lockdown's been really hard at times, but I'm grateful for some of the things that have come out of it, for example, and then you might give some examples. And it just leaves you and the person listening to you in so much of a better mental state. You also can address this in your internal dialogue, which your internal dialogue can often be a self-defeating dialogue full of gnats, negative automatic thoughts, ones that you don't even question, the ones that you don't even notice. And so you can use this technique within your own thinking as well as the way that you express yourself to others. Now, I like this, but I always mess it up and find that I haven't got it the right way around, like I just did then. So what I've done is the rebuttal was my idea. So when you realize that you've put your butt and you've ended on a negative note, you just go again with the positive thing. Okay, so you then, my daughter never ceases to amaze and amuse me, but I wish she'd get dressed without a fuss. But wow, does she make me laugh. You rebut at the end to avoid that problem. Now, I want to have a bit of time for questions. I have got a couple more things that I feel like are essential, including the model that I wanted to share with you. You can contact me on my email address here at Bootham School, my work email. And I can look at all your questions, which I will do afterwards, because I have rather had to skip to the end. So, talking about action, inaction, my approach is to act when I feel under pressure and under stress. And I like this quote: the antidote to anxiety is action. During that action, though, we often find that we're full of action, but we're still full of anxiety. I don't know if that's your experience. So one thing that you can do, which I wanted to share with you, is the 7-11 breath. So when you're feeling really wonderful, your out breath is longer than your in breath. That's how your physiology naturally goes. So what you can do is you can consciously control that and have that feedback, mind over matter, matter over mind. So you make your out breath longer than your in breath, and you will naturally find that your thoughts and your emotions calm in relation to the physiological feedback, the biofeedback you're given. If 7-11 also is quite distracting in itself, using the areas of your brain which relate to language and thought also help to calm you down. It's a technique used by people during panic attack. But if you don't like the counting, you can use this other method which I learned, which was imagining an A4 piece of paper. So you run your finger mentally over the top 7, which is shorter than 11 down the side, so that, and you can just keep on going round. Okay, so that just makes sure that your out breath is longer than your in breath. People, when they're trying to calm down, they go, oh, breathing, and they breathe as if they're, somebody under stress and drowning. They do great big sort of gulping breaths, but actually when you're relaxed, you're breathing diaphragmatically. You're breathing really gently, like you're in a deep sleep, gentle sleep. I'm trying to do that now. And then the other cunning thing that I learned about was the humming. Who knew that the sort of om that people use in meditation is actually doing something physiologically? If you hum down your nose, it boosts the nitric acid, oh my goodness, wrong word, nitric oxide, not to be confused with nitrous oxide, that's laughing gas, or nitric acid, but nitric oxide is boosted in your nasal cavity, and it has all sorts of wonderful effects. I've been researching that in terms of anti-inflammatory, boosting your immune system, and it's one of the reasons why mouth breathers, especially at night, are having health issues, because really you want to be breathing out with a bit of a hum to generate that nitric oxide. So that's a top tip that you could explore. This was my model, and I've got a couple of minutes now just to explore it. So if we say, don't just sit there, do something. Yeah, that's one way of approaching anxiety and uncertainty. But perhaps the opposite approach is, which I really like, don't just do something, sit there. Okay, so how can both be true? Well, the concept is that if you give yourself headspace, then the action when you do perform it is considered action based on your beliefs, your ideals, and therefore you're acting in a way that's meaningful to you. And that's a definition of flourishing. Okay, if your beliefs and your actions are matching in your life, then that is the definition of a flourishing life. The wonderful thing about headspace is it also doesn't just allow you to work out what your meaning and your purpose and your priorities are, but it also gives you energy. So it's a double whammy, if you like. Now, there are many, many more things that I would love to discuss with you, but I have run out of time. And so if I can get back to the questions, I think I'm going to have to say I'm going to deal with the questions at a later date. So I will look at the questions and I will record a video and I will send them to you then. Okay, so that's okay. So I was just wondering whether there's a couple more things that were essentials that I intended to say to you before I left you today. So we know that your 5 a day is your 5 fruit and veg. We know to get exercise. We know about social connection. I hope that this is all now common knowledge in terms of the things that you need for day-to-day well-being. We've talked about headspace, which can be in all sorts of forms: creativity, listening to music, laughter. They've been watching Fawlty Towers this morning upstairs. Sleep is a big one. It might be the top one, and I recommend this book and this technique. I've worked out that if I write a to-do list, this is based on research, rather than a what I've achieved, but what I still need to achieve just before bed, that makes a huge difference. And the reason being is when we wake in the night and can't go back to sleep, that's not because we've woken in the night. We wake in the night all the time. This is my Fitbit readout. And you see all the little red bits, all these little tiny red bits. These are all times when I've woken in the night, but was completely blissfully aware. This one here, I was aware of this, and I put on an audiobook. Could be why we sleep, in fact. I love an audiobook because I can just relax in the safe knowledge that I am acting, I am doing something, I'm learning. And in fact, the only problem is I get so relaxed that I fall asleep and don't hear the audiobook. Anyway, the point being is if you have written a to-do list before you go to sleep, then your default mode network, which is the thing responsible for saying, oh, actually, hang on, there's a dentist appointment. You know, when you're doing work, you're at work, and then you stop work for a minute, and then suddenly it pops into your head, oh, I'm supposed to be at the dentist. That's your default mode network doing its job. And if when you wake for a fraction of a second in the night, your default mode network is worried, it has things that haven't been written on a to-do list, it wakes you up, and then you start ruminating about all the things that are worrying you. So that's my top tip. Writing a to-do list before bed will inoculate you from waking and staying awake. I've got to stop. Gratitude diaries. There's lots of evidence about significant effects of gratitude diaries and volunteering, which has all of these wonderful PERMA. If you look up PERMA as well, evidence-based research about what people with ideal mental health have in common. And it's been upgraded from somewhat of a pseudoscience into a scientific study using experimentation to back up the advice. So I hope that you've had some ideas that you can put into practice, and that you've enjoyed this talk. And I wish you all the best. Thank you very much to the York Festival of Ideas, and enjoy.